Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Pittsburgh Pirates. We are at the beginning of 2045, a couple months away from spring training, and about 3 months away from the start of the 2045 baseball season. It's been a quieter off season for the Pirates, I'd say, in terms of the number of moves that we've made. But the moves that we've made have been very significant. We traded away longtime ace starter Tony Santana, and in exchange for him, we got second baseman Bobby Guzman, who is likely to be our new starting second baseman, at least for this year. We also made a trade for third baseman Willie Madrano, using some of the money that we freed up from moving on from Santana to afford Madrano's salary. And then we most recently made our really only free agent signing, bringing back Vinny Tomei, who we had traded for before the trade deadline. I think that he can hopefully, even though he's going to be 35 by the time the season starts, be an effective first baseman or DH for us against right-handed pitchers, give us a little more balance as one of the few left-handed bats we have in our lineup, particularly because Luis Flores probably is not going to be ready to go at the beginning of the season. So the Pirates have been on a pretty good run. We've made the playoffs in 5 of our 7 seasons as the GM of the team. But we've only made it as far as the NLCS once, so we've never really been a threat to win it all. We're hoping that moving on from Santana, rebuilding both our offense and defense in the infield with the acquisitions of Guzman, Madrano, and then bringing back Tomei will improve our offense and improve our defense. And although the loss of Santana, who as recently as the 2043 season was the NL Cy Young Award winner, will be a significant loss for us, we do feel that with the likes of Sal Valadez, Bobby Astorga, Felix Bath, and the youngster Juan Bin Daoud, that we do have enough up-and-coming young pitchers, particularly starters, in our system, that hopefully we can fill in for Santana respectively, and maybe even be better, considering he's now on the wrong side of 30 and his skills have started to decline a little and he's coming off of an off season. So maybe we're a little better in pitching if everything works out, and we should be hopefully a little better in offense and a little better in defense. And hopefully the combination of all those items allows us to be not just a playoff team once again, but maybe more of a realistic threat to potentially win the World Series. You can see that Tomei is really the only signing we've had this offseason. We have gone and made a bunch of minor league contract offers to players to hopefully round out the rest of our minor league system. And the one thing that we're thinking about as we get closer to the season, we're 28th in budget, we're 28th in payroll, and you can see that our salary obligations for this upcoming season are expected to be about $85 million. Next year, right now, we're about $113 million. A lot of unpredictability around that, given that we have a number of players, including the recently acquired Madrano and Guzman, who are going to have pretty big arbitration numbers, but those can be variable. But I think we do need to be realistic that if we have a solid year and maybe we get a little bit more money in our budget for next season, we're still kind of a $90-95 million tops payroll kind of team. So right now we're close to 20 million above even what that best case scenario is, which means that we could move on from Guzman and Madrano, who we both traded for, but we may have to be realistic that this could be our last season with Isaiah Hill at $24 million. I hope that's not the case. He is a player who you can see we signed to a long-term deal. He is by far the highest paid player on our team. He is by far the most productive bat on our team. You can see in 6 years in the major leagues, he is a 2-time MVP, a Rookie of the Year, 6-time All-Star, and a 4-time Silver Slugger winner. He's coming off what you could honestly call an off-season for him, and he hit .289 with 40 homers, 122 runs batted in, 147 OPS plus, 139 WRC plus, and a 5.6 WAR. And as I said, it's without doubt an off season for him. And by at least the measure of WAR, it was the worst season in his entire career. And that's a pretty productive season in my view for the worst season of your career. But if we can't win with what we've done to kind of hopefully improve our offense and our fielding, give a bunch of young pitchers a shot to join Longoria, Gonzalez, and Montoya at the top of the rotation, if we can't be more successful with that and a 29-year-old Isaiah Hill making $24 million, we're going to have to think long and hard this upcoming off season about whether we can really afford to be spending $29 million on Hill, or is it time to trade him to a big market team that can more easily handle that contract. Hopefully it won't come down to that, but being realistic about the way our team is positioned, if we did move on from Hill, that lets us basically hopefully bring back everybody else that we would potentially want to on our team. And we do have, with the likes of Joel Fields in AAA and Danny Calez in AA, some more bats who can play corner outfield positions who are not that far away from, potentially being able to try to fill the hole on our roster that would result if we did move on from Isaiah Hill. So hopefully we'll have a magical season. We will have a long run in the playoffs to the World Series. We'll get another bump higher from our $150 million budget. Isaiah Hill will win the World Series MVP award, and there will be a way to bring him back and bring back most of the team and fit it under the salary and budgetary constraints that we'll have for next season. But I'm at least going to throw out the idea there now that this could be it for Hill this upcoming season. I hope he's a player that we can kind of keep in Pittsburgh throughout the entire run. Would love him to be a Clemente or a Stargell kind of player who spends their whole career in Pittsburgh. I'm pretty sure both of those guys spent their whole career in Pittsburgh. I'm sure someone will let me know if I'm wrong about that. But realistically, if we are a 95-win team with a first-round exit in the playoffs that doesn't make $30+ million for old man nutting, it's going to be pretty hard for us to run this thing back with Isaiah Hill next year. But that is a problem for the offseason and for next season. Right now, we are going to focus on hopefully seeing if there's any final transactions we can make. If there's a big-time player whose salary comes down, may look to add one or two more bodies to the team. And hopefully we can get through spring training with everyone healthy. The major injury that we're dealing with right now, really the only injury that we're dealing with right now, is Luis Flores with that ruptured MCL that cost him the last half of last season and will likely cost him all of spring training this year. Hopefully we can get him on a rehab assignment maybe towards the end of spring training. If not, then early in the season, get him up to speed. And, when he comes back, that could move Tomei to more of a DH against right-handed pitching role. And Henry Gonzalez will likely be moving back to the outfield. He's a 2-year veteran at this point, a 2-time All-Star, similar to Hill, also a Rookie of the Year, wild card game MVP for us. So he's an important bat. He will be playing somewhere. Could be first base, it could be left field, it could be right field, could be center field, but probably won't be. Could even be DH. But Gonzalez will be in the lineup every day if it's up to us. And finally, the last move that we expected that would hurt our fan interest happened. Elijah Helton looks like he has signed with the Yankees. Not much money at all, just $1.14 million on just a 1-year deal. So Helton certainly did not get what he was looking for, but still going to negatively impact our fan interest, unfortunately. Ooh, 4-point hit from losing a middle reliever, so that really stinks. You can see with that loss we're only projected to sell less than 2,000 additional season tickets compared to last year, and our attendance per game is down by about 1,000 from where it used to be. Pretty sure it was projected at 36,000, so losing 1,000 people a game in attendance seems to me, and this is just me, but it does seem to me a little aggressive that 1,000 fewer people per game are going to show up after we lost a middle reliever. But it is what it is. And as we get close to the start of spring training, just a few days away, making a few final offers to minor leaguers or players with minor league contracts, including old shortstop from both Kansas City and Pittsburgh, Tony Fonseca, spent last year with the Marlins. Still pretty solid defensively. 35 years old at this point. Don't know whether he would agree to a minor league contract, but pretty good leader, pretty good defensive player. Would not be the worst guy to have stashed in AAA if we get hit with a rash of injuries in our infield. And spring training finally will begin today with a game against the Giants. Taking a look at the front office, still got about $3 million to spend. As I mentioned, not really impressed with any of the players who are available on free agency at this point. And we also don't have any obvious holes on the team at this point. So I think the plan is to just carry that money into the regular season and potentially use it to take on some contract if we get close to the All-Star break and have a hole or two that we need to fill. We are getting to the point where we're close to have sold as many season tickets as last year, which is a positive step in the right direction. Would have preferred that fan interest be higher than it is, but at this point it is what it is. Going to invite a few more players to camp than we have right now. Right now it's just the 36 guys that we have on the 40-man roster, and definitely want to see what some other players can do. Fields, we'll put up Estrada from AAA. Don't really have a lot of other big-time players in AAA. Down in AA, got a few higher potential guys, so we'll put some of them up on the roster just to see what they can do. I don't think we need another catcher. I think we've already got 3 with Ibarra, who's going to be the starter, Quiroz, who was the backup last year, and Rodriguez, who is the prospect who was in AAA last year. I think we're definitely going to be going with some combination of Ibarra with the other 2 at the major league level, so I don't think we need to have one of those other catchers in camp quite yet. And as we get ready to get spring training underway, we're going to try to get a look at all three of the four young pitchers, the top three prospects that we think we have. We're going to go with Longoria, Gonzalez, and Montoya in the rotation. And then Sal Valadez, second round pick from our first draft in 2038. Juan Bin Daoud, third round pick from our first draft in 2008. And Bobby Astorga, the fourth round pick from our second draft in 2039. Gonna all get an opportunity to start during spring training, and presumably at least one of them, since Omar Gaona could very well end up in the number 5 hole when the season begins. But at least one of them should be in the rotation, and probably at least one of the others will end up in the bullpen when all is said and done at the end of spring training. And we've made it to the end of spring training. Our pace of season ticket sales and our expectations for attendance during the season, as well as total revenue during the season, have all trended in a negative direction over the past month or so, even though our fan interest hasn't changed at all. So that's not, I'll use a different word than optimal. That's not preferable. Looking at our team, still have 41 guys in camp. The good news is that nobody is banged up except for Luis Flores, who still has about 1 to 2 weeks to try to recover from that ruptured MCL that ruptured his 2044 season. He's now a fragile player, so definitely good that we will at the very least have Vinny Tomei on the Major League roster to play first, and certainly, as we talked about earlier, Henry Gonzalez can also potentially play first base, but have a lot of decisions to make with 24 position players still on the team. Should be a little easier with only 17 pitchers at this point. Longoria was brilliant in spring training. Gonzalez was solid. Montoya was solid. The youngsters were definitely mixed. Juan Bin Daoud and Sal Valadez, neither of them was really all that great. Bobby Astorga was solid, second best ERA on the team among starters behind only Longoria. But he still is probably, just in terms of his stuff and his profile, definitely in a battle to not just make the rotation, but really just make the 26-man roster. We'll also have a few cuts to make out of the bullpen, so we are going to give that some thought. You can see, looking at our bullpen, with the exception of Alex Arroyo, everyone was fantastic during spring training. Alex Arroyo, as you may remember, is the 22-year-old who we took at the 13th pick of the draft in 2041. Felt that he was great value at that spot, and he's actually viewed as the number 13 prospect in baseball right now. Had him in camp because he is a player that should be a big part of our future. Clearly not quite ready for the major leagues yet. His control is still an issue, but that is really the only thing that he still needs to work on at this point. You can see he had a pretty nice year in A-ball last year. He's 22 years old at this point, so we are going to send him to Double-A Altoona and see how he functions there. Is a guy who could be helping us in the not-so-distant future in terms of bolstering our starting rotation and our pitching staff in general. So still have a few cuts to make on the pitching staff, and then obviously a lot of work to do with the position players. So we will make some easy cuts right now, and then we're going to walk through the last couple cuts with you live. And we've cut the pitching staff down to 14 players. We've also asked manager Jan Vasquez how he'd suggest the rotation and bullpen look with those 14 players. And you can see he did move Astorga out of the rotation, even though he pitched better than the fellow youngsters Bin Daoud and Valadez. we're going to go with those guys. I think they've got a little more potential, so we're going to see what they can do in the 4 and 5 holes. Certainly we'll have guys like Mike Wright, Omar Gaona, and potentially Bobby Astorga who could fit into a 4th or 5th starter role as the season moves on if we need. We are going to go with only 12 pitchers. If you look at the stamina of our team at this point, it's pretty exceptional. 55 stamina is the lowest of any of these 14 pitchers, so definitely feel that we can go with a 12-man rotation or a 12-man pitching staff. The first cut is going to be one of our youngsters, Felix Bath. He is not, in my view, as big a prospect as Bin Daoud, Valadez, or Astorga. You can see he's also older than all of those guys. He's 26. The other 3 are all 24. So we are going to send him down to AAA. That, to me, is the easier of the 2 cuts that we have to make. And the last cut is going to be Elijah Moore, 35-year-old. Had thought about potentially sending Astorga down to AAA just so he would get consistent starting time. Don't necessarily feel a ton of confidence in what Juan Bin Daoud is going to do. He's still got work to do on his stuff and his control and his slider, to be honest. But he did put up a 3.37 ERA in AAA last year and was a 3.86 ERA in 32 2/3 innings at the major league level. So I think he can hold his own. Somewhat similarly, Valadez was not exceptional in AAA last year with a 4.08 ERA, but did put up a 2.70 ERA in a small sample size, 10 innings pitched in the majors last year. So we'll see what those guys can do, and we'll see what Bobby Astorga can do out of the bullpen in his first major league action. So Elijah Moore is headed to the minors, and we have a 12-man pitching staff. Longoria, the ace, Gonzalez, the veteran, Montoya, the young veteran at this point, 26 years old, and then the real youngsters, Bin Daoud and Valadez, rounding out that rotation that for the first time since we started this playthrough 8 seasons ago is not going to have Tony Santana in the rotation. And for the first time in several years, isn't going to have Omar Gaona at the back end of the rotation. He's going to move to a lefty specialist role. You can see Gonzalez is our only lefty starter, but we will have Mike Wright, Danny Robles, and Gaona as lefties out of the bullpen, the rookie Astorga, and then the proven righties, Ethan Mingo, Greg Gaylord, last year's reliever of the year, and Ricky Rios as our right-handers out of the bullpen. So feel really good about the bullpen. Feel pretty good about the top 3 starters, and we'll see what Bin Daoud and Valadez can do. As I mentioned, we do have guys like Astorga, Gaona, Wright. Honestly, a lot of these guys with their stamina and the fact that they have at least a 2.5 to 3 pitch arsenal could definitely fill in as starters if we need. So we were 6th in the league in pitching last year in terms of runs allowed. Would definitely like to get into the top handful of teams again this year, so hopefully can improve at least 1 spot in the pitching rankings this upcoming 2045 season. Moving to our position players, Nelson Ibarra is going to be back as our starting catcher. Little bit of pop in the bat, excellent defensively, and he holds his own offensively, but he will be back as our starter. The question is who's going to be his backup. Last year's backup, Mario Quiroz, who is respectable defensively, good personality, hit just 218 for us, profiles as a below average offensive player, although with 9 doubles and 124 at-bats and 19 walks. His OPS plus and his WRC plus were definitely respectable. But the youngster Chris Rodriguez is also a good personality, also solid defensively, and profiles as potentially having a little bit better of a bat. They both have options at this point. I think I want Rodriguez up for the long term, but we are going to start him down in AAA just to manipulate his service time. I know that's kind of lame, but it's one of the few buttons we can press as a Pirates team. And he's obviously, not a huge prospect at this point. I think he's a very good backup catcher. He's kind of borderline, in my view, as a starting catcher, because although the bat should be decent, the glove is solid but not exceptional. But if we can keep him down for the first month of the season, get an extra year of team control, and only have to have a guy, Mario Quiroz, who's very similar to him, up instead, I think it makes sense to get the extra year of control, even though it may just be controlling a backup catcher for the extra year at this point. So would expect that unless Rodriguez gets hurt or Rodriguez just is a total disaster in AAA, that we will swap him and Quiroz probably about a month from now and give them both some time on the major league roster this year. In one of the higher quality players that we're going to cut, we're going to send Joel Fields back down to AAA. He was our first round pick just 2 years ago in 2043 out of NC State. Number 75 prospect in baseball. Split last year between high A, double A, and AAA, and combined for 36 homers across those levels. Was very tempted to keep him up, but he still has some work to do as far as his contact, his eye, his avoiding strikeouts, even his home run power. And he just isn't going to get regular playing time at the major league level, despite his good profile, given that we've got so many good outfielders. So we are going to send him back down to AAA for some additional seasoning. I would think that we would see him before the end of the year, or if we have some injuries in the outfield. But again, with Isaiah Hill in left, Arellano in center, Gonzalez and Ruacho in right field and DH, and then Herrera as a backup center fielder, just not going to be a ton of playing time for him at the major league level unless we have some injuries. Dave Casanova is a shortstop we had in camp, was a scouting discovery in 2039. Really like the glove, really concerned about the bat. Hit just 222 in AA last year. He may end up playing in AAA for us, but for the time being, we are going to send him down to AA once we kind of get the 26-man roster figured out at the major league level. We'll then focus on figuring out exactly who's going to go where for our minor league teams. The reason we didn't send him right to AAA is that it's very possible that Tony Fonseca, who he was the minor league free agent signing, we mentioned, guy who previously was a longtime starter for us in Kansas City at shortstop and a short-time starter for us in Pittsburgh at shortstop. Nice glove, although his range is moving in the wrong direction at this point. But we do potentially have both Fonseca and Alex Soto, who are going to be potentially heading down to AAA. It's possible one of them may end up making the team. They both have really nice gloves. Just don't know if either is going to hit enough to justify making the team. But if if both of them end up down in AAA, then I have a feeling that we will end up keeping Mr. Casanova in AA for the time being, just so he can start more regularly. If we do keep one of those shortstops in the majors, then we may promote Casanova to AAA. But those are the types of decisions that we will figure out offline once we get the 26-man roster established. Jose Estrada is a veteran second baseman. We signed as a minor league free agent before last season. Played with us down in AAA, like having his defensive versatility and a respectable glove in our system, but don't see him making the major league team. Hopefully, we won't need him, but it's nice to kind of have a guy like that down in AAA who's a veteran who can, I don't want to say hit a ton, but maybe hit respectably and help us out a little bit. We've got to figure out what to do with the 2 Rule 5 draft picks from last December. Jaden Callaway is a guy who's never been above high A ball. Pretty good range. Looks like he could eventually be a decent major league bat, especially given that speed that he has. So like the 22-year-old, but we also like Jose Donoso, who is the guy that we picked back up from Houston after he was part of the trade to Houston that brought on our new third baseman, Medrano. He's also only made it to high A ball, but he at least hit .319 in high A, good personality, and again, a bat that looks like it could be a respectable major league bat when all is said and done. I just don't know. We obviously can't keep both of these guys, but can we potentially try to keep one of them on the major league roster? I think we could. And I kind of like Donoso a little better. He's not as good defensively, but I think his bat is further along at this point than Callaway's is. And given that we're going to have to keep this person on the roster all season, and we are a team that is trying to win it this year, win it all, we are going to send Callaway back. No guarantee that Donoso is even going to make the roster at this point. The one thing he does have going for him, and the reason we maybe keep 6 outfielders, is because we do have Flores on the IL right now. I think it would be even harder to potentially keep Donoso if Flores was healthy. But right now we've got to figure out a few infielders to cut because we've got far too many infielders on this team right now. And the first guy we're going to send down is David Green. You may remember him. He was a 5th-round pick of ours back in 2039. Like the fact that he can bunt. He's got a little bit of speed. He's very versatile, can play a lot of positions potentially. And decent contact, but not a lot of home run power, not going to draw a lot of walks. He's fragile. He also hasn't played above AA. So we are going to send him down to AAA for some seasoning, but he is a guy who I think could still help us out in a utility role at some point over the next couple of seasons. Alex Soto, I really like the glove, good personality, and he is unfortunately out of option years. I just don't see him being a major league bat. If we had some injuries and we had to bring him up as a utility infielder and a defensive substitution, could definitely see a role for him. So hopefully no one is going to take him from us. But we do have to waive and DFA him. As I said, hopefully no one grabs him from us and he makes it to AAA and accepts an assignment to AAA. But that cuts us down to 16 players, so still have 2 more moves that we need to make. Given that Tony Cota is our durable and excellent defensive shortstop, I don't see a role for Tony Fonseca right now. Similar to Coda, he could have an important role for us as a backup if we have some significant injuries in the infield. Since we signed him to a minor league contract, we can get him down to AAA without an issue, but just don't see a lot of playing time for him at this point. And for our final cut, there are 3 players in the mix. The Rule 5 acquisition, Jose Donoso, never played above high A ball, but think he has potential to be a decent major league hitter. Not going to get a ton of action, but could we keep him up as a 5th or 6th outfielder? Definitely. Tony Rendon, who we traded for before last season, did not hit too much for us, a 225 batting average and 209 at-bats. He is a prototypical utility infielder who can also play all 3 outfield spots, has a little bit of speed. The bat is not great, but he's a pretty versatile defensive player. And then Ethan Fox, who thought might become our starting 3rd baseman, but with the trade for Medrano, that's not going to happen. He, similar to Rendon, is a pretty versatile defensive player, can also play corner outfield spots in addition to all the infield positions. A little bit better bat. He hit 286 in very limited action at the major league level in 2043, 284 and 148 at-bats last year. So like his bat, because of the defensive versatility of both Fox and Rendon, Fox, as I mentioned, can play every infield position and corner outfield spots. Tony Rendon can play 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and play all of the outfield spots. I think that means we're going to send Donoso back to Houston, where we had traded him. I like him as a prospect, but as we did talk about, we've got guys like Joel Fields who are going to be on... who's really kind of probably ready for the majors at this point and going to be on the roster at some point. And we are, barring injuries, going to have to make another cut in, let's say, 3 to 4 weeks after Flores has had a little bit of a rehab in AAA. And I just don't see a situation, unless we have a bunch of injuries, where Donoso would survive another cut to make room for Flores. So we are just going to go ahead and release him. Rendon was out of options, so we would have had to waive and DFA him. Ethan Fox still has 1 option year left, but as I said, he's a 284 hitter at the major league level at this point. He's really versatile defensively. I think he's a really nice utility player for us to have. So that gets the team to 26 players. Would love to hear what you think about the cuts we made and didn't make. What would you have potentially done differently if it was your choice? Always interesting to hear how others would build their rosters and build their lineups. And our Pirates ended up, for what it's worth, with a 17-6 record in spring training. So the team is feeling good about themselves as we get ready for the new season to get started. Taking a look at the front office after all those cuts. We're going to have some money if we need to make trades during the season, which is good. Although I guess when we do end up moving Flores... Flores is on the IL, so I think, his contract is not crazy, but I think that that's already factored in with him being on the IL, but I'm not sure. One of you could let me know. Actually, I don't think it is. I don't think it is at this point because we're still in spring training. But we will have some level of money to bring on contracts during the season if we need to. Fan interest hasn't changed during spring training. Hopefully, if we get off to a good start and we are competing for the division and a playoff spot, playing some good baseball, we will see that number creeping up a little bit during the season, which will hopefully mean that we'll be selling some more tickets and generating some more revenue every game out there. We'll see how that goes. We are going to finish up figuring out what all of our minor league rosters should look like at this point. As you can see, only 21 players on Indianapolis right now, so we definitely have some holes to fill there. And we'll figure out what our whole organization is going to look like offline and be back in our next episode with the beginning of the 2045 season, and we'll check in then and see what the preseason predictions are when we do get to opening day and everyone else is at their 26-man rosters. Until then, would love to hear what you think about what we've done, and thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great day.